This is AV SuperFriends Off the Rails, an almost regularly scheduled open discussion on audio and video in higher education. We'll sound off about our most brilliant ideas, our dumbest mistakes, and everything in between. And because this conversation will almost certainly go off the rails at some point, we'll end up covering just about everything else. And now, the AV SuperFriends. For November 17th, 2023, it's the best sounding podcast in higher ed AV. This is the AV SuperFriends. Broadcasting live to tape from coast to coast, easternmost to westernmost, northernmost to southernmost, gate post to hitching post. I'm your local host who can boast the most milquetoast and utmost humility. I'm Chris Decter, and it's time for another Friday afternoon podcast adventure. And we are back on Friday.
Yay.
And let's say hello to our panel of illustrious AV SuperFriends today. I'm joined by a principal metrics analyst from Corvallis, Oregon, Mark Kolowazinski.
That sounds fancy.
A lead residence producer from Bowling Green, Kentucky, Justin Rexing.
Oh, I thought that said lead.
A lead residence producer. And special guest, a national creative facilitator from Ames, Iowa, Mike Pedersen.
Glad to be here.
So on today's show, we're going to discuss building an internal university integration team and devices that might just have solved the problem with USB-C. But first, let's do the news. And today's news comes from System Contractor News and from our good friend of the show. He's been on the show, Steve Greenblatt from Control Concepts. Mm-hmm. And Steve has an article here that Justin has read in depth and can summarize beautifully. But fundamentally, what Steve's talking about is outside consultants, outside contractors, outside small businesses who are often involved in larger AV projects. Some of them are driven by pure profit, and I think we've all worked with them. And others have a kind of a more holistic approach and are there to ensure that the solution, the service being provided, everything is operating at the top of its capability. And underlying, like, necessarily, possibly regardless of price, but maybe price isn't the number one driving factor here. But let's make sure that the solution being provided is appropriate.
That sounds like blasphemy. We need money here, Chris. This is all about money, man. Come on. No.
It's actually everything that he wrote is very true.
It's true. Yeah.
Reading through this, it kind of reminded me of my business. I don't really pay attention a lot to my business, which I probably should do more.
This is being recorded, exactly, right?
Yeah. So, it's being recorded. And what I mean by that is I have no idea the profits or the margins and this and that and the other.
It's just
the
not
only
getting
thing
better.
I care about really is, are we getting things done? Mm-hmm. How many tickets are we getting in? Do we have major problems?
Tickets.
Like I was just on the phone before this call trying to figure out a big noisy issue in one of our systems down at the chamber. Not really concerned what it's costing us right now to fix it. I just know I have to have it fixed before Monday's event. We'll worry about cost and profits and charging the client later and talk with them about that. So we're definitely more about relationships and ensuring that we have good quality AV systems out there. Mm-hmm. I agree with the article.
You should. Well, I think too much business will strangle all the culture out of an organization.
Yes.
Right? It literally will kill it. So, because somebody will make a decision, it's solely based on a couple cents here, a couple cents there, and things that were good ideas will fall to the wayside just because whatever, some spreadsheet says we have to do that. And I think businesses that focus solely on that bottom dollar probably are not aligned with listening to clients up front. And say, hey, we do it this way because this is how it integrates into our metrics or whatever it may be in our service model. And this is kind of the crux of that argument we have with a lot of integrators. Like they come in and want to jam things down our throats because this is what they are dealing with. They're getting their kickbacks or whatever it may be.
Widgets in this quarter,
right?
And you have to buy these now.
Right. And it's not about us being wasteful or anything like that. It's like we have a culture, a support culture, an actual working culture we have to keep intact that maybe I can't replace widget A for widget B because it's going to have a direct impact on my standard kit, my support, my ticket, all that stuff. But there's a lot of integrators that just don't care about that. They're like, no, I'm working for the architect. You're going to get what you're going to get. If you wanted it differently, it should have been in your Division 27, right? And it's like, why?
And that's when you find a new integrator, right? you can't find an integrator that understands your business model, then keep looking, because there's a lot of integrators that want to do work. So absolutely. And I love the word culture, right? I mean, that's, you have to understand the culture of your client, and you have to work with that, or you're not going to probably do business with them for very long. So,
yeah, and it's being mindful.
And Mike, you raise a good point there that if you're working with we're all coming from public universities, and often that involves the bid process and the proposal process, and integrators are selected often, if not entirely, almost primarily based on the price that they are going to quote for that. But it's not to say that there's multiple integrators out there and available. And if you are having trouble with one, like, the last 3 buildings they've done have been bad, I'm like, then stop working with them. Build those relationships with other ones. Spread the love around a little bit. Try some out on a small job, 2 or 3 rooms or something, before you turn them loose on your brand new, College of Business or engineering building and find out, we have 50 that are terrible now. And kind of vet the quality of work you're getting, because a lot are purely on bottom dollar. I mean, Mark, even you mentioned about the replacing widgets. My favorite, and it's a pet peeve of mine, is the almost 300 high-end DM RMC scalers that I have at every projector that aren't necessary, because every projector has the HD base T input directly. Now, yes, there's someone out there yelling at their car stereo right now, but it has an internal scaling engine. I don't care. Set your EDIDs correctly. It's not a problem. But it can de-embed audio. There's other ways to do that. I can do the exact same thing and save $1,000 a room, and do your math. 1,000 times 250, 300 is a lot. That has been spent over the years. And there is all sorts of that stuff all over this country with, and worldwide, I suppose, where integrators, consultants, whatever, have kind of snuck in some of that stuff to the unknowing customer because they get a better kickback for it. And that is absolutely part of this business. And I love the fact that you have somebody like Steve Greenblatt calling that out and saying, no, he's not going by name and pointing at, people individually, but saying, look, we don't have to do this. We can provide a better quality of service and still make money on this without sneaking stuff in there. Do a value add, provide additional services, provide something else other than just charging people more. But yet that still seems to be the way of things with a lot of our industry partners out there.
Yeah, I think the quality of that relationship with the integrator, we all know, if you find a really good one that you work a lot with, maybe it's not even an integrator, just a box sales or whatever, somebody who's willing to work with you and not against you on things, you're both in this together, and it's not me versus them or whatever, it's us together. You're going to get more repeat business, right? Would you rather make that quick dirty dollar up front, or would you rather have repeatable money over and over and over again? And I think my decision has always been to work with integrators and technology companies that want to work for us to find solutions together, not just say, this is what you get and don't throw a fit, right? So it's just, I don't know. It's two-way.
Well, and for me, and this is something that I picked up from Chris, right? At one point you said there's 2 things that you never give up. You never give up design and programming, right? And for those of us who have the ability to do that, and there's smaller schools that don't, and that's unfortunate for them, right? They've really got to work that integrator relationship a lot closer. But for some of us, I just create design standards, right? And it's just they just come install it at that point. Now it's not a quality of the hardware they choose or the their designs. It's how good do they hang stuff and pull cable.
But I kind of argue that even if you don't know the design or the programming today, and let's say you don't have the resources today, learn that over time. Because even if you're not, like you said, Mike, even if you're not learning, or even if you're not designing it and then having the integrator do it, at least when you read their designs, you can understand what they're trying to do. Like for example, we just recently had a consultant spec 2 network switches for every system in a building because he wanted to build in network redundancy.
Ooh, double network.
So one network switch that had 24 ports on it had 8 ports in use, and the other one had about 10. And we questioned, why is there 2 network switches? He said, well, so in case one dies, you have a spare. It's like, well, you don't really get the higher
I
education
buy a whole
sparing
lot
model.
full of cars just in case. Yeah.
We need one spare for every widget we have out there, period. One for one replacement.
That's government spending. Why have one when you can have two at twice the cost?
Exactly.
Twice the price.
Exactly.
So these are the things that, you know, if you understand design, even if you're not designing them, you can pick apart and question, we don't need to spend that much money, and that's kind of ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, Justin, you mentioned the concept of building that internal skill set, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. After I push this button, and we'll be right back.
Hey, you look like you're pretty good at hanging projector mounts. You're probably able to run up a ladder with a projector on one shoulder and spin it onto the pipe without missing a beat, right? Well, are you ready for the next level in projector mounting hardware? Then try independent amalgamated frustration mounts. Our factory kits don't line up with any of the popular projector brands. Universal mount interface? What's that? Each independent amalgamated frustration mount ships with almost all the hardware you need to fully integrate with your projector. And for an extra special treat, we'll mix metric and standard hardware and ship them loose in the box. Our anchor mounting points come pre-stripped and cross-threaded for your convenience, and none of our set screws or tension nuts will maintain their position for more than a few minutes, just long enough for you to get down off the ladder and start working on something else. Got a tough installation with a short throw or ultra short throw projector? Independent amalgamated frustration mounts are a perfect solution and will ensure your labor charges really add up. For your next project, try independent amalgamated frustration mounts. You'll hate them. And coming soon, frustration mounts for LCD monitors and TVs.
So, Mike, we had you on the show. Well, we've been trying to get you on the show for a while, but I'm glad you're here.
Right?
So thanks again for joining us.
Yeah.
We had you here because we were going to talk about building these internal skills, building these internal teams, and the concept of, as you phrase it, and I don't know if you coined the term, but we'll credit you with that. We'll give you 90% of the credit for the internal integrator. So why don't you talk a little bit about that concept, what that means, and kind of that process, and you've built a successful team at Iowa State. Maybe talk about that kind of the road to that coming in, taking over a team, building up a team, and kind of, you know, that whole amount of there's it's not just, you know, I need to hire 3 people and off we'll go, but there's a lot that goes into it. So I'll just turn it over to you, and we'll put a quarter in you and let you go.
No, that's great. Yeah. So, the term in-house integrator, I love that term, right? Because it describes exactly what we do, right? So when I came to Iowa State, prior administration had chosen to outsource all their AV, and that maybe hadn't gone as well as they expected. And so I came in and I had one really stressed out tech, and then it was me. There were the 2 of us. And I was kind of, like you said, I was kind of starting from scratch. But I came from an integrator, so I kind of knew where I was going. And so, the first thing I did is I went to start hiring people, right? I hired 2 people within 6 months, right? And then I hired 2 more. Yes.
Pause there. How did you get the buy-in to hire those people? Because this is, I think, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think this is key, because we all know in higher education, it's really hard to create positions, much less keep them and fill them. So let's dive into that, if you don't mind, a little bit.
What were you building? You had a vision in your mind. You're like, I want to build this. What is it that you wanted to be successful at?
Well, yeah, I wanted to do as much of the installation work with Iowa State staff as I could. Knowing that it was going to grow over time, right? That I wasn't going to be able to get it all done immediately. But hey, okay, let's start with the simple spaces, right? There's no reason to hire that out, right? I can hang a monitor on the wall. Let's go do that, right? So as far as getting the buy-in, well, I had it easier than maybe most do, because they had just come off this concept of outsourcing it all, and they realized how expensive that was. And there were just a lot of departments that would request a quote, and then they'd see the quote from the integrator, and they're like, no. And so they just weren't doing anything, right? The technology was just getting older on campus, and they weren't actually, pulling the trigger on the quotes. And so I think the leadership saw right away that, that needed to change. So I'll admit that my timing was pretty awesome from that perspective, and that, it was a pretty easy sell because they were seeing all the problems with the alternative.
So I envision a campus just with like 100 different types of things going on, all bulbs and weird stuff and cables strewn about and no standard approach at all. Is that kind of what you're walking into? That's in my mind, like this is the ultimate nightmare of like rotting rooms everywhere.
So it wasn't as bad as that necessarily, right? They had standardized on one of the Trons pretty early on, right? Even before I came, and
Lutron.
And
Kramertron.
Yes, for so for a while they've been doing that, right? And so, at least the campus was relatively standardized on one control system and one switching model. Now, there were some older spaces that were still using an old school push button solution that was not one of the Trons that we had to get rid of some of those. But it really wasn't horrible, but it was certainly a lot of opportunities for standardization. Particularly, projectors in particular seemed like they just got a quote for generic projector X at whenever they went to go buy projectors, and whatever model it was that was cheapest at the time apparently was what they were buying. And so there were a lot of different projector models around. That was certainly one thing that was kind of a mess. But
Is this back in the olden days where like bulbs were a thing?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I could just envision this wall of bulbs.
Can I
and all
show
these part
you my
numbers.
lamp-based projectors that are still under warranty? Some of them, they're so new.
Yep.
Man.
Even to this day, I think we stock like no fewer than like 10 different bulbs, right?
Yeah.
Man.
At least, right? So yeah, it's kind of crazy, and the other thing that was really a mess was a lot of the workmanship was just not professionally done. I mean, I'd go to troubleshoot a room.
The faster you do it, the higher your profits.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Who cares about cable labels and, dressing the cables up and cleaning things up, because that takes time, which dips into profits.
I'd go to try and troubleshoot a room, and I'd pull the rack out, and I'd shudder. I'm just like, first of all, I'm like, it was a little panic moment too, because I'm like, how the heck am I going to figure out which cable's which here? Because it was just spaghetti land.
It was wired with a shovel. You just put it in there. That's always my favorite.
Pretty much, right? And so, well, the other thing is like, they would never remove the old cables either, right? So
no, why would you?
They're all these.
Yeah.
That's not in the scope of work, Mike. It says
Why
install
would
new
you
thing.
do that?
Yes.
Why would you do that?
So there were all these unused cables that were still sitting there making a mess of stuff, right? And
we're gonna put new stuff, but we're gonna make sure we integrate that old wire and really weave it in there nice. Yeah.
It's in there to generate induction loops.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a lot of that here where I'll refer to these systems where there was stuff in there and they added this and they changed this, but none of it was ever addressed, the oldest stuff in there. And I refer to that as AV archaeology, because you have to start digging down to figure out what's going on and what's happening to try to troubleshoot these systems. It is not
Analyze
easy.
the layer of dust.
Yeah, it's all. You get in the bottom. There's like a transparency. You're like, look, there's an old transparency film in here.
Yep.
That's nice.
Yep. Yeah, and we still had overhead projectors in a ton of rooms, right? So now they had other projectors too, but gosh, there were still a lot of rooms that they were keeping those transparency projectors around, and we started to yank those, and yeah. So the first thing I did is I kind of hired an all-in-one person, right? A person I thought could kind of do it all, who could do some programming, could do some installation work, could go do some troubleshooting. When you're getting started like this, you really got to think jacks of all trades, to get started. You can't specialize your first couple of hires because, it's probably not going to work out so good for you. Unless you get permission to hire like 8 people at once, right? Which that never happens. So
the whole team, just recruit a whole ball team to come in. That'd be sweet.
Unless you're, at a select private school in California, then maybe you can choose to do that. But
yeah, we're going to farm out anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Man,
so
that's ruthless.
It's true.
It is. I'm just,
Yeah.
hey, Anyway, so you were saying you got an all-in-one. How was that process? Was it hard to find the all-in-wonder boy or girl or whoever that was?
Well, yeah. So again, I knew what I knew what I wanted, right? I was looking for someone basically from an integrator. I was trying to steal somebody from an integrator who.
That's what I was wondering. I feel like you had somebody in mind. You're like, I'm gonna steal this person.
I'm gonna poach that.
Yeah.
So actually, my first hire wasn't, but there were a couple of hires after that, which I poached from known integrators.
Let me ask, how is that interview process? Do you just walk around campus and point at something like, did you do that? No, I didn't do it. Okay, good so far. Let's move on to the next room. Did you do this? No, I didn't do that one either. Okay, well, you're getting closer to getting hired here, so how does that work?
It's you just have to ask the right questions, right? You're asking questions about, you're asking questions about process. You're asking questions about, closeout. Talk to me about project closeout, right? They'll either have good answers or bad answers, right? And there's not much in the middle.
Project closeout.
I'm wondering if you're going to ask that, Justin. You come to an end of a project? Wait.
Exactly.
You want to be a project manager?
So you just try and figure out if they are process oriented and detail oriented, and then you hire them if they are. So that was kind of how that went. So
you got an all-wonder. You started off. You're setting out on your mission, and
setting out our mission.
And so what was kind of like? Was it just everything under the sun you guys were doing? Were you pulling cable? Like what was the general scope you were embarking on in those first early weeks?
Yeah. The idea was small projects, and we were going to do it all. We were going to design it, pull the cable, connect everything up, build the rack, write the program it up, and test it, right? So that the intention was to start with small projects, but do the whole scope instead of starting like just a partial scope. Because then we could start to build a process, right? From that point, that you can then scale to a larger larger projects, right? So and that that ended up started really well. We had a good base of clients ready and waiting for somebody to come in and do this for us because of the drought time, and so yeah.
Were you centralized staff, or where were you in the organization here?
Yep. So we're in IT services. Yep. So we are a campus central staff organization. We are centrally funded from the university to take care of 211 general university classrooms, provost scheduled rooms, and then we work as an in-house integrator on a fee-for-service basis for whoever else on campus wants AV work done. And
you said fee-for-service. Do you charge for design services, or what does that fee look like? What are you charging for there?
We're charging for all of it, right? So we're charging, design, it's design, installation, project management, programming, closeout. Yeah, so we're 100% time and materials, right? And so basically, we give them. Do you feel like you have to compete with outside integrators? Are you well below their price where you don't are you getting multiple quotes presented to you from clients going, can you beat this? Like how? Yeah. So for the first 6 months we got that, and then they just stopped, right? Then they just, it didn't take very long for them to figure out that we were going to be a lot cheaper. Right. Well, and the other thing was at that point, we were the contact people, right? They realized that they had to work through us even to get integrator work done. So we were kind of pushing that too, right? It's like, hey, for any AV work, you guys can't independently go out and talk to an integrator. In fact, we actually told the integrators too that if you want to keep doing business here, if you hear from anybody other than us, you need to send them to us. And
so we have a lot.
You show with a baseball bat, be like, if I find out, pinky toe Colucci's coming to get you.
It's a big stick or a carrot, depending on how you look at it, to wield to say, because Mike, correct me on this, but at a certain point, they're probably going to call your team regardless for we need help with this.
Correct. That's
and
right.
if they want to do that, then they have to involve you at the beginning. So I've had departments like, we're going to go buy all this stuff. And I'm like, great. Then you can't ever
Don't
call
call
me.
me.
Like, no, but we need to call you. Then
How about this?
you work through me, and this is a project, and we do it the right way. And at the end of the day, they don't care. But it's just like this, because it was wild, wild west here when I got here as well. So, but go ahead, please.
So, but I want to bring that. I want to kind of harp on this a little bit. So, how do I solve the problem? Asking for a friend here. If I get presented with quotes from local house AV integrators with like Control 4 and some consumer grade equipment, and our clients are saying, bid this, provide me that.
You're not
like,
a box
no, we're not
sales.
providing
That's not what
that.
you're doing. Yeah.
And they go, okay. And then they just go out and get that service from that integrator.
Don't
even
support them.
after we tell them we're not supporting it, and they don't care. How do you address that situation? You almost have to address it at procurement in the process.
It's earlier than that, I think.
I will say that was the other magical thing that I came into is I had a procurement agent who had also worked in audiovisual before me. He was at the campus before I came.
See, that helps.
Oh, it was amazing, right? And actually, so for the first year and a half, he came to my weekly team meeting every week. The procurement agent did.
That's great.
And so we were working really close with him. And so, he was actually doing that, right? He was becoming that gatekeeper of saying, when he was seeing those things come through, he was like, no, right?
Do you get some quality control, something at that purchase
absolutely.
level? That's nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm not going to lie. I realized I was lucky all the way around, and how this went. But, sometimes,
because I think what I'm realizing is we went through the similar thing, Mike, with a couple variances, building our own internal integration team, and it seems as if these days that just one small little variable or one little feather blown in the right way can just blow everything up on you, just in a matter of a minute. And it all really comes back to relationships too. So we're seeing our facilities people go back to the AV consultant way and bidding things out, and right in the middle of restarting that whole journey. And it seems like a, trip back in time almost.
That was one of the other big jobs early on was to rebuild trust, right? Because all trust in the AV team at the university was trashed by the time I got there. And so there was a lot of just going out, meeting with people, shaking hands, introducing myself, kind reassurances. It's going to be okay. Trust me. I'm here now. It's all going to be fine. And actually FP&M was,
we're going to fix everything.
Our facilities team was actually one of the groups that I spent a ton of time with trying to do that. Right. Because, they had a big capital project that was coming online just as the time I came there, and it was woefully unprepared for audiovisual. And so we got it all fixed up, and they ended up spending a ton of extra money. I mean, we were knocking walls out to put conduits in. It was, to get the AV done the way it needed to be done after I got there. And to their credit, the facilities team, they were paying attention, right? And they were adding up the money, and they were figuring out, okay, maybe we need to engage the Mike early on in these things. So that was the other thing that, I was spent a ton of time trying to work with the facilities team and make sure that, they understood the needs and values of engaging me early. And again, timing was good because they were just in the middle of a project where it had gone really badly. And so the sales pitch of, here's the return on investment from working with me early, it was very obvious to them, right? It was right in front of them. So
in those earlier days, Mike, you're kind of starting down this path, and you're mending fences, you're rebuilding these relationships, like at the base level here. what was that value proposition from folks? Like when they're like, I'm going to call Mike, the new guy's in town. I've heard he's doing X, Y, and Z. But what was your identity? What was keeping people coming back and calling you? Because you already said that like AV had a bad reputation. You're rebuilding this thing. What were they asking you to just do? Was it just AV, or was it like a support buy-in? What was the secret sauce that people were looking at you and saying, I want that, I need that?
Yeah, so by and large, it was for new projects, right? Installations. That was the vast majority of the interactions that I was having. Certainly some support also, although that is a little bit complicated on campus because even though we have a central IT, we also have each college can have their own IT, and almost all of them do. And actually for if one of their department spaces AV breaks, they're typically going to call their own IT person first to try and come fix it. So again, we were also trying to interact with those IT people in the various colleges and departments, and let them know, hey, we're here. If you need tier 3 or tier 4 support, we're here to help, right? So if you can't get it, with your team, call on us. But again, the messaging was, now you can call on us, but you have to have an account number to give me because we're going to be billing you, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where it went. And over time, I hired some more people, and we continued to do more and more in-house. And as of last summer, we made the decision to take all the programming in-house, even for all the integrator install projects. That's a big lift. In fact, I'm still trying to get final approval to hire another full-time programmer to help us get that done. I think I'm going to get that happen, but it might still be a little bit. But yeah, we're continuing to take more and bigger projects on. Like we've done a couple of really big projects now in-house, right? We did not that we can have the conversation about active learning classrooms, but it is what it is. They wanted one, right? So we installed one for them, right? So it was 10 breakout stations, each with their own, monitor and social spot and wired HDMI connection. Each of them had a local push button panel, but the teacher then could lock those in or out, could also take whatever they wanted to show to wherever else. And yeah.
Okay. So how many people do you have now? How big is your team?
9 of us total.
Okay.
So I've got 2 full-time installers. That's pretty much all they do is go install stuff. They're awesome. I have 2 people that are pretty much full-time live events because we in the last year we took that on too, and so that's pretty much all they do. And then I've got one who's pretty much a full-time programmer, one who's an engineer, one who's another jack of all trades. That was the first technician that he was the technician that was there when I joined, right? The one guy that I joined. And then I got one guy who's pretty much break fix, right? He does incident response and goes out and fix stuff, right? So that's kind of the team breakdown. So, nice. But everyone does whatever they need to do, right, that day, right?
Do you ever do anything in conjunction with like a capital construction project or even just a minor renovation or construction project and follow construction timelines and all that? Are you getting into some of those?
Absolutely, 100%, right? Yeah. And so again, that's the beauty of getting in close with our facilities team, right? Most of the capital project managers, and the construction managers, we know each other on a first name basis. We're talking all the time, and they involve me early. We've got a new building going up right now, and I've been involved from the beginning, right? And I'm in the all the document review meetings, right? So design development review, and then the construction documentation review, and so I'm able to make sure that we're getting what we need, and we're following all through timelines on the whole thing. Yep.
Excellent. Sounds like a lot of people have a very similar path that have built out some teams. I think I'll share here at OSU. It started out like budgetary, right? We kind of we had some success because the project managers were on campus capital. Like, what's it going to cost to build 20 rooms, 30 rooms, 40 rooms, whatever it is? And we had a very clean, like, here's your bill of materials. And then they finally come like, well, wait a minute, what do I need to make this work? And then they realized we had to be involved much earlier on. And so, it's interesting to kind of play that out. Was that kind of the early days where you were saying, okay, you want to call us to have this done, but what you're really asking is, what is it going to take to call me to support this when it's done? Right? Is like, was that part of the equation? Like, hey, this is what we do well. And so this is what we think you should be doing. And was there ever any resistance to like bill of materials or anything like that? Or was the trust good to go?
The trust was pretty good to go, right? Most of them didn't really, honestly, they don't know enough to know if the bill of materials is right or wrong. And you know,
so they see that bottom dollar, like what, $40,000? Jesus, I can go to Best Buy and get a TV. Like, I think there's people who are up against that, right?
Well, yeah. Well, everyone always. I mean, there's always someone who's going to come with the Best Buy thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you just can't get away from that, right? But no, because again, we were coming in anywhere from 25 to 45% less than what the integrator quotes were coming in, and so, you know, it was a pretty easy lift.
See, that's an easy sell. I've
Right.
got the opposite problem where we're coming in higher than the outside integrators because the outside integrators are quoting video and not audio and using like consumer grade parts, and nobody knows the difference. You're just like, what the hell? And you got to tell the client, and they don't care. They just know the bottom. Their budget is this. Mm-hmm. They can only spend X. You're too expensive. Sorry.
So, like, wow. Mike, in that vein, like, would you consider yourself operating from a culture of scarcity or a culture of plenty?
Well, that's an interesting question.
So I know where you're at, Justin. So I won't even ask you.
Probably from scarcity. Yeah,
really?
probably
Okay.
operating. Yeah. Yep.
So very, very tight budgets, and people are very mindful all the way around. And it's not necessarily a budget. Like, it's a value proposition, right?
It's like, a mindset.
Yeah, if I know you're asking and what it is, I know that's you're looking out for our best intention, so I trust that, and I think that's that trust proposition.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
well, and part of it, and it's kind of a cultural shift too, to say that we're going to have an internal expertise here. And Justin, you raise this all the time, that like somebody coming in from the outside, good or bad, they're from the outside, they must be an expert. Whereas, Mike, you're saying, look, we're right here on campus. We can do this same thing, even if, hey, we can save you money, but even if it's the same cost, you're getting the benefits of we're here all the time. You can reach out to us later. We're the ones who have to own it for 10 years. We don't need these hefty service contracts and things because we're already doing this stuff. But sometimes that's a cultural internal change at the institution to say, but we want to hire these because then that's how it works. And you're like, no, you don't have to do that. The perception
is that the outside people have more experience and they know more about different things because they've done more than us. But have they really? And that's really what the perception is, where it breaks down is that's obviously not always true. And a lot of these consultants hire, people right out of college and they have no idea what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, it's interesting because the one advantage that an outside integrator has on us is basically warranties and insurance, right? So we're up front. We have terms and conditions on the estimates that we send out, right? That basically says, look, we're 100% time and materials, right? So we sign off on the job and you call us the next day and we have to come back out and fix something. You're gonna pay for that too, right? And we've had some pretty upset clients, when they find that out, right? But that's the point where you have to remind them that we did it for 25 to 30% less than they would have had to pay otherwise, and so a couple more hours here, you're still coming out ahead on a good deal. But people are so used to, in a commercial environment, having someone come take care of that early on, it just seems completely unfair to them, right? They're like, what do you mean I got to pay more? I just paid a bunch of money to install this thing, right? And so that's certainly something that we fought with a few times. That's one of, in fact, in our terms and conditions, we basically state that very explicitly. At the bottom of that, we basically say, not everyone may be comfortable with the situation. If you're not comfortable with that, please, let us know, and we'll connect you with a local integrator, right?
So do you
give you that warranty?
Like your warranty on your workmanship? Is that what you're talking about? Is it 90 days or a year for that external department where you wouldn't charge for, like, if a cable came loose and it caused a problem 3 months from then, you would just go back and fix it for free?
Well, like for us, we don't do anything for free, right? That's what I'm saying, right? It's like
but if it's poor workmanship, then you would go back and charge to fix that again?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. Like, do you control your budget, Mike? Is it your budget?
Yes.
Yep,
I do control the budget.
And are you cost recovery model?
Again, for the 200 rooms, we have a central fund that comes, but everything else is 100% cost recovery. So we bill everything else out.
Interesting. And this is like, we're gonna get in the weeds here. This is on my leadership CIO level questions here. Where are you on your digital transformation? And is there a trend to centralize all IT aspects on campus, to include all the departmental spaces? Is that a thing?
There's many of us that would really like to do that. I'm not sure how serious that conversation is at this point. I could see where a lot of the colleges would fight that pretty hard because, well, we have our IT staff that we really like, and we don't really want them to go away, and we know them, and we're comfortable with them, and so I'm not sure. I'd like to see the campus leadership take us that direction. I think that's going to be a hard political battle.
I've seen AV be the successful carrot in that, where it begins the closer partnership with many of the dispersed IT groups, because at the end of the day, the teaching and learning is being done the same way. Yep. And so if we're providing systems that are reducing that friction, and that's still the campus brand, in effect, it can become that Trojan horse to have that centralized IT, because, like, okay, whatever happens in that college is just as important as happens in that college. So why are you reinventing the wheel all along the way? And like, can we centralize some of that so people can use those monies more effectively closer to the client? So just curious, I think every college has a variant of that, and they're on that spectrum somewhere.
I do think that there are a lot of people on campus who are seeing the general university classrooms get regularly updated now, right? They're starting to see them happen on a cycle. And they're looking at their departmental spaces going, okay, this hasn't been touched in 15 years.
Right.
And so I think I'm sure there's a lot of them, thinking in their heads like, well, if our classrooms were in that model, they'd get on the regular refresh cycle too. Mm-hmm. So
that's how they get you.
Yeah, right.
You're just trying to sell us stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just curious. It's always a fascinating conversation with people from campuses all over the world. They always have some weird perspective on that, and I do believe we are on this like long journey to the middle of like the common teaching and learning space. Like all of our problems are very similar. And I think the kit of parts all kind of ultimately will deliver this very common experience. Don't get me wrong. There are folks that are doing some radical, crazy, really good ideas out there, but like our core missions are all very similar. So it's always curious to see how people take that.
Yep, absolutely.
And every school is a little bit different on that, as far as just like that potential change in overall structure or something. And Mike, you brought up like, well, we have our people, we know our people, we don't want to lose that. And oftentimes you don't. That same person still shows up to the same exact office every day, just their budget comes out of somebody else's, or their salary comes out of somebody else's budget. Now, granted, that department doesn't get that budget anymore, but that's a whole issue. So Mike, I did want to ask this question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I do think if we were to go to more of a centralized IT for everyone, that would certainly happen, right? That person's probably not going to move offices. They're going to be in the same office they were before. Their reporting structure is just going to be different, right? Now, that's where, again, but that's still like a control thing, right? Like, so now the department chair or the dean doesn't have direct access to that person to give them instructions and orders. They have to go through someone else, right? So there's that.
So my question for you, for people listening, and they want to make this same jump and kind of like build their own team, or they have some interest in building those skills to start to become the expert and start to know more about what's going on, and they're not just getting, we inherited a new building and it has all this stuff. where should someone start? What's your recommendation on like start here first, look at this first, or because I think the rest of us all have different ideas on where we would start. What's your thought on coming into a large institution that was functionally, you had I think 2 guys trying to figure out run everything in there. It's just you had to start somewhere. So if I'm at a small school, or if I have a small team, or if I'm being tasked with, hey, let's build up our own internal team, where is that starting point?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think first thing you have to do is kind of understand what the pain points are, right? So you got to understand what is not working, because that's where your early value add is, right? Is you fix the things that aren't working well anymore. So yeah, get a good understanding of what's broken, and then use that as the basis of your sales pitch to do this, to bring this in house. And then the other thing is, I mean, just do the cost analysis, right? And that, Justin, it's very interesting that you say that your in-house team's more expensive than some integrators. Well, that would change the calculus, certainly. So.
Exactly, because the integrators in Bowling Green are the home theater people they're getting quotes from, not your Diversifies and ABIs and
I see
those.
what you're saying.
So our problem is the integrators that our clients are working with aren't the same as the ones that working with you.
Perfect.
Which tips the scales.
Yes.
Because we're doing professional grade enterprise stuff like you are.
Yes.
But they're undercutting us by going to Control 4 and widgets and gizmos and tchotchkes from Best Buy and saying bid on this. And you guys are so expensive because I can go get this same solution from somewhere else, but we all know it doesn't work out. So that's the other thing. More money and more resources in the long run, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So then you just do the price comparison, right? You basically you get a professional outside integrator to come give you an estimate for enterprise grade stuff, and then you quote the same stuff in house, right? And you show it to them, and you say, "This is what I can do it for. This is what they can do it for." But
and
you have to let me. You have to.
It's apples to apples, sort of.
You have to let me hire people to do this, though, right? And then you start. Then, like I say, then you hire that one person, right? Who it can be that jack of all trades. Ideally someone who has a little programming experience, someone who's not afraid to get up on a ladder, someone who can troubleshoot, right? Solder, do the whole thing. And once you can, and for me, we can talk pros and cons about the values of certain certifications like CTS. Mm-hmm. However, that was one of the things that I was putting into my postings, because at least I know that person has some professional audiovisual reference point to build off of.
A language, it's a glossary.
Yep, to get
or they should.
Right? They should, yeah.
They should.
To at least start my candidate pool with people there, right? And so, that's it's a good place to start too. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Are there any skill sets right now you think are super valuable as you're looking forward to build out your team? Building it more, or like retooling?
Right. And so one of the things I would do differently if I were to start over is I'd hire that jack of all trades, but then my next 2 hires would be a full-time programmer and a full-time engineer. And I don't know which order that would be, right? Instead I hired a couple of installers, right? So here's the thing. If you could get and again, Chris, you can speak to this because you're the person who I heard preach about this. But basically, you can hire anyone to pull cables and turn screws, right? But if you can give them the design you want, and if you can program it and get the GUI to work well and have it, be intuitive and easy to use, that's a big part of the battle, right? And so, if you can force the design, the standardization, and start there, even when you're still working with an outside integrator, and then you go from there, right? Then you can build on that with your own install team as time allows. So that's certainly something. If I were to do this again, I'd approach it that way much differently. So.
Yeah, we've often referred to that as don't outsource the knowledge work, because that drives so much more of the experience side, the operations, the general user experience, the teaching experience. And to Mark's earlier point, the people who want to come in to teach, they're going to be teaching anyway. They really don't care. But all this stuff matters to us to ensure that's being done correctly, or what we would consider correctly. But if you're doing the installation, but yet even on the larger projects, the standards, the designs, the engineering, the programming is being done by somebody else, then especially if it's part of that bid model, you get what you get, and it's can be incredibly maddening, especially if you have larger capital projects where they have their own source of funding for that. And so, yes, they've got all the money in the world right now for the new, physics building. But once they, once that is installed and dries up in 5 or 6 years, they're out. What do we do? But we have this monstrosity of thing that was installed because that's what was specified at the time. So
correct.
And we're doing something similar here. Where we started with a team that was very reactionary, a team that there was 2 or 3 people who respond to tickets and go reboot things, and that was it. So let's start with training. Let's start with some professional development. Let's build some skills. Let's start with small projects, digital signage, conference rooms. Now we're doing full classrooms and stuff, and now the team does the all the programming, even for capital projects where an integrator's coming in, because we've had to go back and clean up the last 3 anyway. And so we're slowly building that. And another year or 2, it's just going to be across the board, whatever the IT team says, because that's where the expertise on this campus lies. And it is not an instantaneous process. It takes 3 to 5 years to kind of build that all the way up, and hopefully that expertise will stay there, and that will be the campus culture moving forward. So,
yeah.
Well, Mike, I know you have critical appointments coming up. Any last thoughts on this process of the in-house integrator? Things to look for, things to be aware of for people who want to get involved with this madness, this nonsense.
I guess my final thoughts are, I'm here for you, right? If you need someone to ask questions of, and who's been there, done that, look me up, give me a call, drop me a note on LinkedIn or whatever, and happy to help get you started in the right direction at least. So
yeah. To that end, yeah. If I'm at a small school and I need some help, I want some advice, I'm looking at some upcoming things and want some general guidance on things like this, how are people getting in touch with you? How do you want them to reach out to you, find you, all that stuff? Where are we going to connect?
Yep. So you can email me at MikePed, MIKEPED at iastate.edu. You can find me on LinkedIn at PED1971, PED1971, or just look me up on LinkedIn.
All right. Awesome.
Well, if nothing else, Mike, it's an inspirational, story. This can be done.
Yes,
you're building a world-class team there. You guys are taking on some massive projects internally with great success. We forgot to mention earlier. Award-winning team. That is true. Yes, thank you. And also, you will welcome people to campus when is that? Is it September, October of next year?
October.
Want to talk about that?
Yep, October 1st through the 4th of 2024. We're going to be hosting the ETC, Educational Technology Collaborative Conference here in beautiful Ames, Iowa, right in the center of the heartland. And so get those dates on your calendar and look for more information about coming on that. It's going to be a great time.
All right, very cool. Well, we'll take a quick break. We'll let you escape. And we'll come back. We're going to talk about some solutions for USB stuff.
As many of you know, the SuperFriends have always been better received when we have more input from you. So here's your chance. Send us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and get involved with the show. We're looking for some topics to discuss, some fellow nerds to talk to, or just general AV awesomeness to brag about. But remember, we'll probably steal your ideas. And I suppose we'd take some criticism, but that wouldn't be very nice. Anyway, drop us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and find out how quickly we ask you to join this nonsense.
So for our final segment, first of all, due to a scheduling issue, the role of Mike Pedersen will now be played by Larry Darling. But
Big shoes to fill, Larry.
no, Mike had to leave. Larry was had some conflicts, but we traded them out seamlessly, and now I'm talking about it, so everyone's well aware.
Yeah,
but
you
that's
guys
why the
figure out the
voices
paycheck. I don't care. That's all. on
yeah,
you
they're
guys.
sharing on this one.
Somebody's
Where the
tracking
voices
out
are
here.
suddenly
It's not
changing.
me.
All right, so for our last segment, I want to talk about there's a slew of new devices. We're aware of at least probably a half dozen of them that have been announced or soft announced in just in the recent, I don't know, like summer onward, that relate. And on initial look, they just seem like the things that have been around for years. Oh, it's just another switcher. But these are doing things a little differently, and they may have solved the USB-C problem. We're all well aware of the problems with USB-C in the sense where it sure looks universal, but is it really? So there's devices by Extron, there's devices by Lightware, there's devices from QSys, there's devices from Atlona. And what they're doing is they're treating USB, and we'll put some links into the show notes, but they're treating USB-C both in that kind of the DisplayPort alt mode, the USB data stream, the hosting, the devices on parity with DisplayPort and HDMI for your bring your own device environment. So you'll have a switcher there that's got 2 or 3 inputs, one of which is USB-C, one of which is usually it's HDMI paired with a USB connection, and it's working magic internal on these devices to take what is kind of like the data plus video, and then also data integrated with video, and matrix switching them in many cases on the same level. And Larry, you first brought this up a few weeks ago of like, hey, I know there's been a bunch of these. Did you guys actually look at these? Because this might just be interesting.
Yeah, I brought it up because I was hoping one of you all had tested it, and just to say, yeah, it doesn't work the way it looks like it's working. Because honestly, like, we're an Extron shop, so I'm looking at the Extron one, and like, it might go in a small Class A standard classroom for me, because it's treating the USB just like you said, like it is the display, but I can also bring the room systems in to that person's laptop as well. It's really intriguing, but you all hadn't tested them yet, so I'm still...
So you just want us to do your work for you?
That's the only reason I show up to this show every Friday.
just find out what we've tried and haven't tried. You're like, oh, I guess
Your
I'm not going to do
ROI
that.
on that is not very good then.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
I'm so on the fence with this whole concept. This whole,
I think everyone's on the fence with this
whole
concept.
like principle, like the whole
sketchy
principle
at
of
best,
like
man.
swinging my
Sketchy at
entire
best.
collaboration infrastructure over to a BYOD environment. Like, that's all cool. However, the thing that will burn people outside of like, let's pretend it does all that really well. Am I cool with like the whole remote hosting piece in a teaching and learning environment now being dependent upon wireless for somebody's laptop? Like, that's my one like caveat. Like, if all these things were equal and we had wired connections across board, I'd probably be more willing to that. And I know
Damn, I
somebody's
wish
out there,
Mike
well,
was still here, because Mike's campus is BYOD, and that's the point I brought up. It's like, aren't you just putting all the support onus or the entire success of a system on the person who brings in their own computer, remembering to check the right thing? Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. That's just like, I feel real kind of weird about that.
But I can see the officially supported device is the in-room PC, but having the option, like choose your own adventure kind of thing.
Well, I know
might be nice.
there's some terrible version of this that exists where it's like, well, you have your in-room PC, but let's talk about your room system PC over here. Let's swing all that over there. How about that bad idea? So, like,
I think this is all coming down to expectations. Like, I would put one of these in a system, but I would say, I don't think it's going to work, but you could try it.
I guess I just don't have the true
and then
need.
if
I think
it works,
it's neat.
everybody pats you on the back. But
this
you
goes
set the
back to you being in
right.
sales, isn't it?
Yeah. See,
Well, he already admitted that he has
sales.
no idea how his business works, so that doesn't really matter.
I have no idea how much. Yeah, I just care that the systems work right.
I think there were other things. I was like, well, maybe I could, if it did more of like the DA piece, that was like, if that was honest to goodness, like a matrix DA, like in maybe not a classroom, but maybe in a lab environment, right? Where I'm going to do something where I'm going to share some instrumentation amongst a few different things. That was a little bit more intriguing to me, but maybe not wholesale my like microphones, cameras, and all that stuff in the teaching and learning environment.
Yeah, and I actually hadn't even considered that. That's interesting as well.
Like I think like in a music production lab or in art or something like that, where you're sharing maybe some interfaces amongst some different computers and like, that you may already be providing. I think that would be a clever use case for it, but I'm on the fence about the whole collaboration swinging thing.
Well, and Mark, that's where some of these things, and it's weird to think about because some of the solutions Atlona does it, QSys does it, where they basically re-encode all the data sources and give you that USB connection point for devices. But they also, in doing so, it's not mutually exclusive to that device. So you can deliver that same, camera feed, microphone feed, whatever, to multiple devices simultaneously. And it starts to get kind of weird to think about how that's going to work. The fact that you could have multiple computers in the same physical space talking to some of the same devices, but using them for different software applications.
And that's where I think that lab experience, it's like, that's a great version of that, but somebody try it.
How that would work in practice, I don't know, but it's intriguing to think about. Now, again, why someone would be like, I'm in this conference room and I'm going to use that camera to talk to this guy on Zoom, and you're in that conference room and you're going to use that camera to talk to that guy on Teams. Like, why would you ever do that? It's more of like,
I'm going to do that tomorrow.
But we could.
You would do that and then join this meeting.
Man.
And then I'm going to use interoperability to have Team and Zoom talk to each other, and it's terrible.
It's going to open a wormhole.
But it's more of just that kind of like that what would you call it? Like the making, I'm trying to think of the term here, and I can't think of it here, but where you're
think of it.
Shit. Yes. No, it's not the right term. We're gonna leave all this.
It sounds really shitty.
But so the word I was looking for was leveling. You're leveling the playing field by treating all the devices, all the inputs, all the computers, all the connection points on the same level. You're just saying like these are all now the same, and I'm going to route stuff all over the place, and you do with it what you will. Which again is weird for us to think about, but that's kind of what we're getting at with these. So we would have to, from a design and engineering side, we have to be intentional about how we are implementing these. Because you're right, someone could plug in, get access to those same devices, and I'm like, I'm going to start a Teams call, boop, boop, and now you got a Teams call going at the same time as a Zoom call, and that's going to be a mess.
Is USB eating AV over IP's lunch here?
No.
You don't think so? Because
not yet.
It seems like it's kind of going down that path where like you're getting simultaneous connections with devices, but we just traded the connector out instead of USB-C, where theoretically if we had an open standard of AV over IP, all those things could make and take access to that now.
Which open standard are you selecting this month?
I think they're attacking the issue from different directions. Like in most of these room systems we've talking about, they're all based on USB. Where AV over IP, they're attacking the enterprise and getting like we're going to
AV over IP versus the enterprise.
Yeah, we're going to make this camera talk to that room across the building, even though there's no reason to ever do that, but they're going to do it, and like it's just. I think.
Whoa! Why wouldn't you do that?
Because it's terrible. Don't get into that.
Don't do that, man. Like,
I don't want to hear about
that's a whole other show,
No.
and we don't want to do it.
Oh, we're going to do a combining room show too.
Yes, this came up as a thing.
That's coming up.
I would think as part of that, we should
we're going to talk about our worst shitty rooms that we actually like,
and then share them across campus.
I think
equal opportunity offender.
And build like 50 of them.
That's legit as part of that conversation. So for people listening, we'll do a future show on divisible spaces, divide, combine rooms, whatnot. But I think we should also include that question that comes up every couple of years about let's be able to send the content from this room to that room or send it over here. And there's every few years it comes up again. Let's do it. And we're like, why? You're never going to do it.
We had this need, and then they describe it, and you go, Zoom.
Yeah. So,
and they're like, what?
Mark, to your question,
what do you mean Zoom or Teams?
To your question, that's kind of the way that some of these devices are treating USB connections, USB hosts, USB devices is I'm just going to grab all this stuff and you can send it wherever. And you would be like, why would you ever do that? And I'm not sure. And I think that's maybe because these are the first generation and we're not familiar with it, to Larry's point of like, has anyone used this? Because it seems intriguing, but I'm not going to go buy it until I know what's going on. That we could dig ourselves into a really deep hole here by leveraging these in a way that they probably shouldn't be leveraged.
I mean, there's a new one of these on the horizon that's going to have like the parallel extender cat connection with it. It's going to be like, oh, you put this on your other spot around your room, and now you can share your camera from across the room via cat on this thing too. So I mean, it's coming. Yeah. It's coming, right? And so
the number one answer I get whenever I ask, why do you want to do that? Guess what it is?
Because
we want overflow.
Of course.
Overflow, expansion.
You mean like on Zoom?
Like on Teams and Zoom? What do you mean? What? It's like you got to explain how Zoom works to these people.
That's what I work. That's what I use when I'm sitting at home at my table, pretending that I'm at work.
Pretending that I'm working.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Larry, how did all your remote work go today, huh?
Yeah.
But anyway, it'll be interesting to keep an eye on this. It's kind of like this nascent, like parallel little device thing. And like I said, at first blush, these look like, oh, they're just another switcher with USB on it. Nope, that's not what they're doing. And these may be an intriguing solution. I suspect by the, not quite end of the year, but let's say early next year, definitely by Infocom next year, every manufacturer will have some version of these. You can find some of these from your Key Digitals and CanX and Lightwares and some of these the ones that you wouldn't normally think of, and maybe that's where some of the innovation's coming from. But if these work the way we think they do and do what we think they should do, it's an intriguing kind of last inch solution for some of these spaces.
Maybe you'll get one under your Christmas tree, Larry.
That would be awesome.
maybe.
Secret Santa?
Hey, speaking of Christmas trees, so we're going to be doing a AV Super Friends holiday special on December 15th. So for those of you listening to this in probably about 3 weeks, I think. Somewhere around then. So December 15th, we're doing that live, and we want you to be a part of that. And we have a special ask for the manufacturers, for our listeners, for our fans, for people who really don't like us, but you're still listening to this for some reason. Consider it maybe it's one of your favorite hate listens. Let's see what these jerks are talking about this week. We want Christmas tree ornaments from you, and but we don't want Christmas tree ornaments. We want things to hang on our Christmas tree. We're going to have an official AV Super Friends Christmas tree, and we want to get some tchotchkes, some widgets, some swag, some odds and ends from you, and we will display those on the Christmas tree. So if you reach out to,
it's weird, just not too weird.
That's
yes,
right.
but we want it
PG-13.
related to who you are and where you're coming from. So if you're at another school, great, send us something that's got your school logo on it. If you're at a manufacturer, sending something that's got your manufacturer logo on it. We want something identifiable to put on the Christmas tree. So we will have an AV Super Friends Christmas tree full of our friends from our manufacturer friends and our institutional friends and all that stuff. And for people who really hate us, we'll have a special section just for you.
Yes.
So reach out via Twitter, on LinkedIn, or email mailbag@avsuperfriends.com if you want to get involved and tell us you want to help, you want to send some stuff. We'll give you more information on how to do that, and we'll figure out these logistics between now and then and let you know where that stuff's getting shipped so we can build out the AV Super Friends Christmas tree. Because then during our holiday special, we'll show you the Christmas tree and you can see all the weird stuff hanging on the tree.
We can see how good
Not too weird.
the parcel
Just a little
service or UPS was able to deliver your widget. Did it make it here? Did it not make it here? If it's a pile of dust and rubble, then
Oh, you
we'll
think
hang
people are
that
going
up
to just be
accordingly.
stealing them right out of the mail?
Maybe. If all goes well. But we will
Remember, it needs to
reciprocate.
be on a tree, so don't send us like a DMPS or something crazy.
Well, if
because
you do,
that's
you
not gonna
do.
fit on a tree.
It's fine. But
That's
if
a
you send
big
us something,
tree.
we are going to send you a gift as well in the mail. You will
good
get that
point. Thank you.
as a follow-up. So whatever, if you send us something, you're going to get a gift from us to put under your very
In
own
fact,
Christmas
Mark,
tree.
and we won't, you guys can't see this, but Mark shared a photo today of the mailers that he bought. So we have
Those
AV
are
Super Friends
cool
branded
mailers,
mailers, which look really slick. So you're going to get a mailer with our logo with some stuff in it as a thank you for sending us some of your
Justin's
stuff.
going to drive around the country and hand deliver these things, and it's going to be amazing.
I'm going to put on a white beard and my red hat, and I'm going to go to town.
All of the towns.
Yeah,
Christmas
town
to go to all
after
of the
town
towns.
after town.
That's right.
We'll have a Justin tracker.
I'm going to
of
jingle
over
bell all
Christmas.
over that town.
Oh, you think we can put a GPS thing on him and see where's Justin now?
Where's Justin today?
Yeah.
Wandering
like the Justin
through
tracker on the
central
local
Indiana.
weather that night.
Nice.
Yes.
I'll start working on that.
All right. Well,
So yeah, reach out via LinkedIn, Twitter, email. Be a part of the AV Super Friends holiday special. We look forward to that. So, thanks everybody. Well, we've managed to ruin yet another episode of AV Super Friends Off the Rails. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. If you complain loud enough, we might just invite you on the show.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV Super Friends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.